Good Friday to you. Hope you have a great weekend ahead. I begin the show by telling you a friend of mine, Bob Barnett, passed away today. Super agent, been my agent for 10 years, but I think you'll hear from people all weekend long that he was far more than an agent. He was a good friend. He was Mr. Encouragement. So if you see an obit somewhere, pause. What he built was really remarkable. John Ellis joins me as he does most Fridays. He is the founder and editor-in-chief of News Items. John, did you know Bob from your years in New York? He's a D.C. guy, so I'm not sure he's a New York guy.
I didn't. I know a lot of people who, had him as an agent, and every single one of them was a very satisfied customer. Let's put it that way. He's a legend
Yeah.
in that world.
He made the market. I'll tell you offline sometime a Barnett story that just made my head roll around. I want to begin with Bari Weiss, and I only know Bari a little bit over the radio, but she's fabulous. The Free Press is fabulous. Is this going to happen? Is she going to be at CBS? And what do you hear is the role? And what do you think is going to happen?
I think the role. Yes, I think it's going to happen. A reasonable, good source on that. And I think that the job is not going to be the chief executive. And I think she would probably agree that she's not someone who knows how to run a television news division, but editorial director, if you will, somebody who will, oversee the editorial positioning of CBS News, and that's a great role for her. It's an extraordinary success story. She left the New York Times. She wrote a memo about a note, a departing note about being quote canceled at the Times, which was entirely convincing. And she started the Free Press, and here we are, I don't know how many years later, but it's less than a decade. And she's built an extraordinary, platform for all sorts of different journalists and commentators. And, she's going to make a big number. Paramount is going to dig deep into its pockets and pay her a lot of money for the Free Press. So good for her. I mean,
the common thread at the Free Press, John Ellis, is intelligence. It's sort of like I imagine a news item subscriber. You're not selling to dummies. Your subscribers are smart people, and Bari's subscribers are smart people. Do you think that's more than a niche? Do you think that's actually most of America want good information?
I think there's a big, I think there's a big space for intelligent reporting that's not, with the usual woke spin, but is straightforward. And then I think there's a huge niche for interesting and different opinion. The problem with, so many of the platforms that we needn't name, they tell you the same thing every day over and over and over again. And I think by now we know that they feel that President Trump is awful. You don't find President Trump is awful 22 times on Free Press every day. You don't find it very often at all. And there's so much interesting going on in the world that it's wide open, and she's filled part of that space, I think.
Let me turn to one of those things going on in the world today, an item from News Items. Every window, a solar panel. Now, this never occurred to me until you sent me your note, and now it makes perfect sense to me. Who's got the technology? When will it be deployed? And will the windows really be windows still?
I think it's a scientific research. It's been this breakthrough at a university in China. And they've developed a material that is transparent, so you can see out the window, quote unquote, but it also serves as a solar panel, and therefore, stores energy. This is not something that's, you're going to get at Home Depot in 6 months or even 2 years, but over time, probably 3 to 5 years, if they can figure out how to manufacture it at scale, then I would guess, I don't know, but I would certainly in China, I would think that every new house would have these solar windows, if you will, and probably a lot of the older houses would, the people would install them there. It's an astonishing breakthrough, and if you combine it with the breakthroughs in battery technology, I could power my house basically with these windows. So it
You could
has,
save a lot of money too in the operation of your house. That's why I think
yeah.
we're going to watch on that. It came from sciencealert.com. You can read about it in news items. Number three, I'm concerned about this. I don't know if most Americans can find Moldova on a map, but I can because after the Ukraine war began, that was the next place Putin was going to move. What are the elections about this weekend?
Well, it's Sunday is the election, and the current president has a coalition, a large enough majority, a large enough vote to create a coalition to govern the nation. And it appears that after this election, she will not have that majority. So you have a pro-EU, pro-Ukraine current government, and it's quite possible, if not likely, that you will no longer have that government. You'll have a government that tilts towards Russia. And so it's a very important election. No one's, I mean, unless you're editing news items, there's not a lot of people who are covering it. But it'll be a big story on Monday if she loses, and it appears that she will not get enough votes to form a governing coalition, and therefore the pro-Putin, anti-Ukraine, anti-EU coalition will take power, and that has all sorts of implications, obviously for Ukraine, but also for the cohesion, if you will, of the EU.
There's a breakaway part of the country called, I think, Transiteria, and it sounds like a vampire movie, right? But it's real. It's Russian speaking primarily. It's like a replay of Ukraine on a smaller but no less strategic level. So we'll watch that. I saved the most time for last because I posted this when it came out in news items earlier this week. Stanford University has showed that computers can design new viruses that can be created in a lab. Now, after 9/11, my PhD brother, Mycroft, told me, don't worry about planes, don't worry about nuclear bombs, worry about viruses because they're easy to make and very, very easy to design to kill. And now Stanford is agreeing. How alarmed are you, John Ellis, by this technology review story?
I think everybody's alarmed by it. I know that President George W. Bush was particularly alarmed by it after 9/11 because everybody came in and said, there are a lot of different threats, but this one is gigantic. What's different now is in those days you had to you had to go to science magazines and buy the various materials and have a lab to put them together and so on and so forth. What's happening now is that with artificial intelligence, you can essentially design the virus on a computer. And that's we've never had that before, and so if it was frightening before, it's doubly frightening now.
Older brothers said they could also, and again, this is 9/11, so it's 25 years ago. He expected it would not be that difficult for, quote, mad scientists, close quote, to target special ethnicities, special parts, people who have a particular gene sequence that viruses could be weaponized to a very precise level, much like an assassin virus, but without any kind of limiting principle. Not sure of what it would do in the wild. Does
Right.
Stanford worry about that as well?
Yes, and I mean not just Stanford. I think everybody, as the genomic science is supercharged by AI and eventually supercharged exponentially by quantum computing, you may be able to actually target, an Asian person as opposed to an English person, and that, I mean, that's a ways away, but the ability to target the virus to this or that ethnic group or this or that animal or whatever is upon us. And so the scariest, there's a famous book called Demon in the Freezer. It was written by a writer for the New Yorker, and it's a story basically of biowarfare. And that book was scary when it came out at the time, which I think was in 1997 or something. And you can just multiply that by 6 or 7 times today.
Demon in a freezer. I'll have to do that. We will do Gemini Robotics next week. John Ellis, editor-in-chief and founder of News Items. You can get News Items at Substack. Join the 50,000 people who get it every day and are ahead of the game as a result of doing so. News Items over at Substack. Eli Lake is with the Free Press. He is the host of the podcast Breaking History, and he's generally informed about everything. So, Eli, I want to do two things. I want to get to James Comey's indictment. But first, I made a comprehensive as I could find list of maybe politically violent acts since Donald Trump's election in 2016. And I want you to give me an answer, just your best guess. Political violence left, right, Islamist, insanity, or don't know to each of them. Number one, the attack on ICE this week.
Political left.
Left?
Yes.
All right. The other two attacks on ICE in August and July.
One of them, we now have information, was somebody suffering from CTE. So that might go down to mental illness. I think the other one is left. I think ICE is a left-wing target.
Okay. ABC affiliate in Sacramento, shots fired into it after Kimmel suspended.
Left.
Attacks on memorials or supporters of Charlie Kirk in the aftermath of assassination.
I wouldn't call that necessarily terrorism, but certainly kind of, it doesn't rise necessarily. Some of those are not exactly violent, but certainly left.
Fox News van attempted bombing 2 days after Charlie was killed.
Left for sure.
Assassination of Charlie on September 10th.
I want to say left. I just want to stress, and I'm not doing the thing that I'm not doing the gaslighting thing here, Hugh, but we should we're going to have a trial, and we may find out that there was also mental illness. That's all I want to stipulate.
Yeah, Justice Barrett said that, by the way. Said he's obviously sick, but it looks like violence. The murder of the Catholic kids in Minneapolis in August.
Left, possibly mental illness.
The murder of Melissa and Mark Hortman in June in Minnesota.
That looks like right-wing political violence.
That's right, but there's also a mental illness aspect.
There's also mental illness.
Because
agreed, but yes, okay, yeah.
Murder of 2 Israeli employees at the Jewish Museum in May.
I would call that Islamist and left.
I agree.
Murder
of Brian Thompson, the healthcare executive.
That's left populist violence. Yes.
All right. The attacks on Tesla after Doge got to work, the fire bombings especially.
Left-wing violence.
2 attempts at Trump, murder of Corey Compatore during the campaign.
Left with the possibility of mental illness.
All right. The murder of Brian Thompson, we already covered. In November 2023, Paul Kessler was murdered in L.A. during a pro-Israel demonstration.
That's Islamist left, yes.
Yeah. Anti-Semitic violence generally on campuses as well as in L.A.
I mean, that is the classic. We did an episode called Red Green Alliance. That's the left finding common cause with Islamists.
The March 23 murder of kids at the Nashville Christian School.
Left, possibly mental illness.
Attempt on Justice Kavanaugh.
Again, I'm going to say, I keep saying left, possible mental illness. Remember, he turned himself in, clearly a pretty disturbed guy, but, look at his target.
The kidnap plot of Governor Whitmer.
FBI setup. I understand that there were people who agreed to this plot, but so many people involved in incepting the plot were either federal assets or federal agents that I don't really put that into any particular category, even though they were clearly had infiltrated a right-wing group that was willing to do political violence.
The mass shooting at the June 14th congressional baseball game.
Oh, well, that is obviously left-wing political violence, and we know that because we have, now that we go back, the benefit of a trial, we have lots of evidence about he was a Bernie Sanders volunteer. We should make clear, Bernie Sanders, gave an eloquent statement after Charlie Kirk's assassination. That's left-wing violence for sure.
And then we've had Antifa from the day that Donald Trump was inaugurated in 2017 to this week. What do you make of the Antifa violence?
I believe that Antifa should change their name to FA because I think that they are a fascist organization and they are engaging in classic brown shirt tactics that we associated with fascists, but also communists in the Weimar Republic. But listen, they are, in my view, should be in the book of infamy for swarming on and seriously injuring Andy Ngo, who is an independent journalist who was trying to do real journalism on him, I'm sorry, Antifa. I have like zero tolerance for Antifa. I think that they're a very bad organization, and they give, in my view, the noble cause of anti-fascism a bad name. It is it is false advertising in the case of this organization.
So is it true that it has been the overwhelming case since Donald Trump was elected that political violence or violence that is political plus mental illness has been overwhelmingly on the left?
Yes, I think you should include, there was an individual in Charlottesville, and that was, I think, on the right.
Oh, Heather, yes.
Yes, Heather Heyer. I do think it's important to, I I mean, there was a riot at the Capitol on January 6th. It was not an insurrection. Not everybody engaged in violent behavior, but there were some who certainly tried to beat up police officers. That's unacceptable. So I would call that sort of a kind of political violence. That was clearly from Trump supporters. There have been, we should also mention that there were the mail bombs that were sent or the threats that were sent to newspapers. There was somebody who shot up a newspaper in Maryland.
Annapolis, yes.
Annapolis. So yes, but that said, you're right. A lot of it is coming from the left. More of it, I think, probably is coming from the lefts in the Trump era at this point. And also, I mean, I would include some of the riots that happened, in the summer of George Floyd. So that was clearly more on the left. I think the key, that is a point that I made in my latest podcast, we're also seeing disorganized violence. It's different than groups like the Weather Underground saying our next targets are going to be, the symbols of capitalism in the Pentagon in order to protest our presence in Vietnam. We have nothing like that. They're just sort of individuals who I think are glomming onto a particular cause, like Luigi Mangione. But with the exception of Antifa, it's not organized in the way that it was in the 1970s and late 60s.
All right, now we got a minute. Tell me what you think about the Comey indictment.
I think, like a lot of Americans, I think that Comey deserves a taste of his own medicine. There is a karma kind of justice to it. I really believe that he was the worst FBI director in our history, and he abused his power. On the other hand, I am with Andy McCarthy and others where I don't see that this indictment is going to be won in court, and I don't think he will be convicted. And I think that in many ways, indicting him has made him a martyr. And in that sense, I think it's kind of a political gift, even though the process is the penalty when we're talking about lawfare, and Trump and his allies have suffered that as well.
Eli Lake, always good to talk to you. Listen to the Breaking History podcast that we're talking about the Red Green Alliance. It's 2 weeks ago. And read Eli wherever he shows up, often at the Free Press, to which you should be a subscriber. Charles C.W. Cook, senior writer at National Review. He has his own podcast, the Charles C.W. Cook podcast. He is also on the editors. Charles, I want to run down political violence categories with you, but before that, I want to talk about Brendan Carr. Because I'm in a small group of people, you're on the other side, who think Carr was doing his job. But you know the Constitution, so I want to walk through my argument and have you critique it. Constitution gives Article 1 the authority to make laws. They made the Communications Act of 1934. The regulations and rules are under it. They're elaborate. I've lived under them for 35 years. We're on an FCC-regulated broadcast right now. If you use one of the 7 words that cost me $1,000 per outlet that it's heard over, I also have to operate in the public interest. Carr has a job to do. He made his opinion known. It was public. He got jumped all over for doing his job. Do we want regulators not to do their job because we don't like their job?
Well, I think there's two issues here. One is the question of whether or not the FCC has that authority, which it does, although there are limits. The second question is whether or not it should be exercised in this manner, and usually is exercised in this manner. Now, the example you just gave, which is of profanity, those rules are enforced and have been for a long time. But clearly, the FCC is not cracking down on people who lie on television over FCC organized bandwidth. That's just not a rule that is habitually enforced. And if it is enforced, it's done capriciously. So my objection here, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest with you, that what happened here was the response to the FCC. But if it was, I don't want that sort of capricious enforcement of political views.
Okay, I'll follow up with this. There was no enforcement because the commission, it requires 3 votes out of 5. It's one commissioner. And if, in fact, they took an action, that action would be subject to viewpoint discrimination, conduct discrimination rules, probably would be unconstitutional. Nevertheless, he was public about it as opposed to the White House staffers during the Biden years who would quietly call up Twitter or Meta and censor people. I'd rather have our regulators telling us what they think.
I completely agree with that. And I do think that it's a real shame, I use that word in both senses, that we subsequently got this admission from YouTube, which is owned by Google, that it had been kicking people off the monetized platform as a result of their speech, and no one seemed to care. So if you're asking me whether I think that progressives actually care about this sort of thing, no, I don't. Yeah.
All right, good. Now I want to, I've done about 2.5 hours last night trying to find every act of violence that could conceivably be considered political since Donald Trump was elected president. And I'd like you to give me your opinion whether it's left-wing violence, right-wing violence, Islamist violence, or in the category of insanity-driven violence. And I'm going to go in reverse order. The attack on ICE this week in Dallas.
Seems to have been left-wing violence. Could be some insanity. We'll see.
How about the other 2 attacks on ICE in August and July?
That seems to be left-wing violence.
The attack on the ABC affiliate in Sacramento with the rifle and by the California Teachers Association former lobbyist.
Seems to be left-wing violence.
The attacks on memorials of Charlie Kirk, some dust-ups with his supporters, and it's not violence, but the general internet reaction. Is it left-wing or is it insanity?
There's probably a bit of both, but there's a lot of left-wing violence there. And in terms of the speech, there's a lot of left-wing justifications for violence.
The bombing or attempted bombing of a Fox News van 2 days after Charlie's murder.
I don't know enough about that one, to be honest with you.
All
It's
right.
either left-wing violence or insanity.
It might be Islamist violence. That's the counter-narrative
Okay.
that's out there. The assassination of Charlie, I think you'll agree with me, left-wing violence. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
But,
The murder of the
question.
Catholic
That's the
kids.
clearest case.
Very. The murder of the Catholic kids in Minnesota.
That one I really think could go either way. I mean, certainly his politics were leftist. There's no point in the press lying about that as they have. But there was a lot of evidence there that he was completely crazy. And I wouldn't want to ascribe that one to being political.
How about the murder of Melissa and Mark Hortman in Minnesota, the former speaker?
Yeah, that guy was crazy. This is an annoying
Yep.
one because people have rewritten it. That guy was just obviously crazy. He said Tim Walz had ordered him to do it. Of course he didn't.
You see, he had been a pro-life activist in Africa, so the narrative was easy. Charles, the murder of the 2 employees of the Israeli embassy at a reception at the Jewish Museum in May of this year.
Yeah, that seems to have been left-wing violence.
Could it be Islamist?
Not that I've read, but I'm open to being corrected.
Okay, I think it's left-wing violence too, but I'm just telling people we're aware of it. The murder of Brian Thompson, healthcare executive in New York in December.
Yeah, I mean, that was left-wing political violence.
Now, the attacks on Tesla dealerships, including the arson.
Well, it's hard to know with that because it could either be left-wing violence or people who are crazy who've picked up on the news. But it certainly wasn't right-wing violence.
It wasn't right. Okay. Both attempts to kill President Trump and, of course, the murder of Corey Compatore in the course of one of those. Left wing insanity.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about the guy in Butler. I think it's an extraordinary thing that that disappeared so quickly and that we know so little about the guy who did it. The other case in Florida, I think the guy was just convicted and tried to stab himself in the courtroom. I would say that's a combination of the two. He had left-wing views and was motivated, but he also seems to have been crazy.
I agree. Anti-Semitic violence on campuses from Los Angeles, UCLA to Columbia.
That's left-wing violence, and that's the scariest of all to me in one sense, in that those people are open about their views and the consequences of them. They're not crazy and they're not stupid. They're educated and they believe what they're doing is necessary.
And I'm putting that in one category. There are at least a dozen events that fit under that. The murder of the kids at the Nashville Christian School in March of 2023.
Again, it's difficult to know the state of the mind of the person who did it. That perpetrator had left-wing views, but I don't know if they were crazy too. They often are.
The attempt to kill Justice Kavanaugh or kidnap him in 2022.
It seems like a left-wing violence case, and the more evidence that comes out, the more it seems as if that was political violence in the sense that it was designed to create a different political outcome, in this case, preventing the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, he might have been nuts, but he had a plan and it was political. The plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. Now, people are uneasy about this because some of the people were acquitted, but some of the people were convicted.
Yeah, that seems like right-wing violence to me.
August 17th, the Charlottesville Tiki Torch Parade. Heather was mowed down by a neo-Nazi and killed. Right-wing violence?
Yes, definitely right-wing violence.
Charles C.W. Cook is my guest. We're running through the very long list of violence in America that might be political since President Trump was first elected. June 14th, 2017, congressional baseball practice shooting. Charlie.
I think the guy was quite crazy, but equally his motivations were evidently political. So that is left-wing violence committed by someone who was unhinged.
Yeah. Now, I have not included, because it's so obvious, the January 6th, 2021 Capitol riot. That is right-wing violence, and a lot of people went to jail. It's one incident, but it's many instances of right-wing violence. Finally, I want to ask you about Antifa. Antifa created violence in D.C. on the day that Trump was first inaugurated. There was violence in Portland this week. How do you classify Antifa?
Well, I think that's the ultimate case of left-wing violence because that can't be ascribed to madness. There are a lot of people who are crazy, who pick up politics or hear people being hyperbolic and act on it. But with Antifa, that is more like the anti-Semitic violence we've seen on campus, which is that they really, truly believe it, that they are political actors.
So I went through this exercise after reading George Packer in The Atlantic, who seemed to write at great length to avoid the obvious conclusion that the vast majority of violence in the United States since Trump was elected has been left-wing political violence tinged with insanity. And I don't think it's close. January 6th got a lot of attention, but it's not close. Do you agree with my assessment?
I do, and I think it's interesting that when people make the counter argument, they have to go back quite a long time. I mean, you can, debate it, but Timothy McVeigh in 1995 was a right-winger in some ways. He certainly was in his own head. But that was 30 years ago, and what you've just described, at the very least, is a trend. The trend over the last 10 years has been far more on the left than on the right.
So where do you think it takes us, Charles Cook? And what should the FBI stand up COINTELPRO again, but this time respect constitutional rights so Bill Ayers doesn't walk free? What do you think we should do?
Well, I do think it's difficult. We've always had some violence in our country, unfortunately, and we have a First Amendment which limits the government in ways that it wouldn't in, say, Britain. But we've also had a government that was able to investigate and infiltrate. If you go back to the Klan, the government infiltrated that. We had neo-Nazi groups in the hills of Kurdaleen in the 1990s who were infiltrated. So the first step is to investigate and see if there is any organization, which is a separate thing, and the media is playing with this cynically, which is a separate thing from being of a particular ideology. It's different to say this person was left-wing than to say he's a member of a group that has a headquarters and orchestrates attacks in a coherent way. So we need to find out which is which, and then we'll deal with the problems.
I think we also have to deal with the internet and not via the government. That's pretty hard to do, but it does seem to me that a lot of young men are being drawn into this. Now, if I can switch to James Comey, I usually farm out my opinions on criminal matters to Andy McCarthy, and I'm going to do so again. He does not think this case is very strong. What do you think?
Well, you've got two people on this show, Hugh, who are farming out their legal opinion to Andy McCarthy. But I was persuaded by that piece as well. I think it is really weak. It seems that it only just about got through. One of the items presented to the grand jury was rejected. Andy's gone so far as to say he thinks it's possible that this will be dismissed pre-trial, and then he discusses whether or not that's good or bad for the country. But this is clutching at straws. I have no brief for James Comey. I don't like the guy at all. I think he's a preening fraud. I also think Donald Trump was unfairly targeted over and over again at both the state and the federal level. But that doesn't make this case warranted, and it doesn't make it strong.
Now, he did make the testimony. I went back and read over the testimony after I read Andy. I don't think it's as dispositively not perjury as Andy makes. The False Statement Act's big. There have been thousands of charges of the False Statement Act. Is there any downside to pursuing it to a jury and letting a jury exonerate him?
Well, it depends what you mean by downside. I mean, if you think that it's pretextual, as I do, then the downside is that the jury will acquit him because we don't ask them to look what they think on balance. We ask them to presume innocence. And I think I read Andy's case as being that what they are alleging here is going to be very, very difficult to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, and that the jury isn't going to do it. So the downside for the Trump administration is Comey then walks away and says, this was politically motivated, it was weak, and I've been exonerated.
Yep. Last question. I was thinking about this after I did my list last night. Is Donald Trump significantly more hated than George W. Bush during the height of the war and than Ronald Reagan during the height of the deployment of the Pershing IIs and the cruise missiles in Europe?
I think he is in some senses and isn't in others. I do think a lot of the Donald Trump hatred that we're seeing comes from institutions rather than people on the street who just don't seem as bothered. I do think, though, that the institutional hatred of him exceeds that of Bush, in part because the Iraq War was supported by a lot of people on the center-left. And while Reagan was disdained, there wasn't the sense that he had destroyed everything that the media, for example, held dear. So I think it's of a different kind.
When Mitt Romney ran, he was attacked as by Joe Biden wanting to put people back in chains, and the 49% comment or the 48%, was that different in kind as well?
I think that was a precursor to this. I mean, obviously, the feeling wasn't quite as strong as it has been against Trump, but people will say that's why you got Trump. And there's some truth to that. When milquetoast Mitt Romney is treated like that, you can sense two things. One, the next guy isn't going to be as nice. Two, something substantive has changed on the left among those who are criticizing him. And I think that's what Republican primary voters sensed.
And I think that's right. And I think the left is deep into Alinsky land. 30 seconds. Do you think there's any saving the Democratic Party from itself?
I think the Democratic Party is going to have to lose 2 or 3 elections in a row before it reforms. And I'm not sure that that's going to happen in a country as divided as we are, and in a country where the economy moves around and people tend to vote on its vicissitudes.
Charles C.W. Cook, always good to talk to you. Listen to his podcast. That's under his name, Charles C.W. Cook. Listen to the editors from National Review. And, of course, follow Charlie on X at Charles C.W. Cook. President Trump made news again today, walking to the helicopter. I was on America's Newsroom with Dana and Sandra, and we paused for it, and it's just sinking in what he had to say. Cut number 4.
It's at the Ryder Cup, which is very exciting, and we'll be watching that. This is Kai, by the way, in case you didn't know how he is. And we'll be watching a little golf. I think we have maybe a deal on Gaza, very close to a deal on Gaza. How are you? Hello, Peter. And it's looking like we have a deal on Gaza. And
All right,
we'll
so that,
let you...
I have no idea what he's talking about. Stay tuned. If it happens during the program, I'll bring it to you. Time for my relief factor, because tomorrow is Saturday, 10-miler day. Tomorrow, I carry in curcumin. It's Retron Omega. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you see me take it. And takes a little Trader Joe's water, and down it goes. That's how easy it is. 4 pills. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. Combined, they work with your body's anti-inflammatory system to make you feel better, make you go farther, recover faster, whether your sport of choice on the weekends is basketball or swimming, running, trundling, going to the gym, doing Pilates, whatever it is, Relief Factor is for you. Call 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, or go to their website, find the starter pack for $19.95. You can also get that at the phone number. 3-week starter pack at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Finally, I want you to save some money this weekend by switching to Consumer Cellular, and you can do that in 20 minutes. ConsumerCellular.com/Hugh. ConsumerCellular.com/Hugh. Their phone number is 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454. They save you money. Now, if you don't need a lot of data, they have special data plans for people over 50 who only need 5 gigs of data, 10 gigs of data. Get your phone bill out before you call them, and then you can walk through that. But if you do need unlimited data and you're 50 or older, you can get 2 lines, unlimited data, for $60 a month. Really a remarkable offer. Keep your number, keep your data, keep all your contacts, just lower your bill to $60 a month for 2 phone lines. And remember, when you call 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454, or if you go to consumercellular.com/Hugh, remember my code, which is Hugh25. If you use my code Hugh25, you'll save $5 a month off of your first 5 invoices. So it's more savings on top of savings. You can have savings without sacrificing the quality of your cell coverage. ConsumerCellular.com. I'll give you the number 2 more times so that you don't forget it. 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454. As you know, the Guardians did not win last night. They lost to the Red Sox. They only won, beat them 5 out of 6 times. So it's a tie for first place with 3 games to go. The Guardians are playing the Rangers. The Tigers are playing the Red Sox. I mean, we beat the Tigers 5 out of 6. So it's going to be down to the wire this weekend. Hope I'm happy on Monday. Hope you're watching the Guards tonight. Ben Domenech is my guest. He is, of course, editor-at-large for The Spectator, Fox News contributor, the writer at The Transom, and the host of the Big Ben podcast, which is fabulous. Ben, I want to start by saying I don't want you going into radio. Your voice is too good. I was listening today.
You're dashing my dreams, Hugh.
I don't want you to do that. Guy Benson Guy will do the same thing. He'll push off the top of the building. It's really mellifluous. And I was listening to your opening monologue on how Iger and Disney and the left really don't understand the message that conservatives are getting. And at the same time, I was listening with a professional's ear. Have you ever done radio?
I have only ever been a substitute host, and I will tell you a little bit of the background on that one because I wanted to actually record that in reaction to seeing what Kimmel had to say and kind of the fallout of everything. That was recorded at 5:30 in the morning. So if I can do that at 5:30 in the morning, then that means that I think I'd be more than happy to try it out. So,
well, I used to do morning drive, and you do have to kind of have a cup of coffee and go.
I know.
Afternoon drive is better, and a morning drive year is a dog year in radio. I'm telling you that. But would you give people the quick summary? I want them to listen to the Big Ben pod because it develops over about 12 minutes. Bottom line, though, the left has no idea how they look to the rest of the country.
No, they do not. And I think that this whole moment is really reflective of that. We see the reaction to Jimmy Kimmel and everything that really put him on a pedestal in a way that made him overnight this free speech icon. By the way, I know that I believe it's your son who is a fan of Shane Gillis. He had a very brief comment on his most recent podcast about it. He's like, he was Jimmy Kimmel, free speech champion, gets canceled. Has to go to his Hollywood Hills house for about 48 hours. I had to sleep on a mattress in Queens for a couple of years. Pretty much the same thing. So the point is just that the reaction to it was so over the top. Jake Tapper going on with Seth Meyers saying it's the worst example of government disrespecting free speech that he's ever seen in his career, and all these other claims that were being made about that happens in a context in which the right has really learned the lesson, and I think it's a correct lesson, as sad as it is, over the past several years, that the violence is coming from one direction. And don't give me this both sidesism on it, because it's just not true. And I think that there's also an underestimated aspect of this, and I wonder, Hugh, if you have experienced this, particularly given your connections in Catholic circles. But I know for the American Christian and pro-life community, there was a greater purchase in terms of the reaction to the leak of the Dobbs decision and the targeting of Supreme Court justices because of that. And if your listeners have forgotten, and I'm sure many of them have not, but if they have forgotten or blocked it from their minds, the group Ruth sent us actually didn't just put pins down all over Northern Virginia and the surrounding D.C. area to identify the locations of the houses of these Supreme Court justices. An effort that ultimately led to the targeting of a number of them and the attempted, kidnapping and assassination of Justice Kavanaugh. They did something else. They put the locations of the schools that Amy Coney Barrett's children went to on that map. A lot of people have forgotten about that. But for the Christians who are in this area who I talk to, and for pro-lifers across the country who I talk to, they have not forgotten about that.
Justice Barrett hasn't. She was my guest twice last week or over the last 2 weeks, and her book, Listening to the Law, does not forget that, but she also understands it's her job. She's a woman of great courage. All the justices are.
She truly is. And this is the thing. That's a Supreme Court justice. The difference is that I think now American conservatives and pro-lifers and people who have commitments and people who are committed, I should say, to their faith, who, when they look at that reflection in Arizona of the response to Charlie Kirk, they see something that is not in any way out of the realm or is even something that is reflected in their own churches or something that they're familiar with. They see in this moment a situation where it's not just the Amy Coney Barrett, it's not just the people who sign up for the tough job of being a Supreme Court justice. You could just be an ICE officer. You could just have the wrong opinion from the perspective of the online community. And you are now at that same level of concern. And I think that the American left does not understand that is a lesson that conservatives all across this country are taking from this moment. And because they don't understand it, I think they're going to continue down this road of saying this both sidesism and this message that I just think is completely at odds with the world as Americans of the Judeo-Christian tradition and within the Catholic tradition, and anyone who has been paying attention to this over the past several years, it is just complete nonsense. It's devoid of reality, and I don't think it's going to have any purchase. And when it comes to the free speech side of things, people remember COVID. They remember the way that their favorite speakers were treated. They remember the way that their favorite podcasts were treated. They remember all of this, And so when you come forward with that, within days of Alphabet admitting that the Biden White House was pressuring them to eliminate people who hadn't even violated YouTube rules just because they didn't like them, you don't even have to be super online to have the opinion that what you are being told by the mainstream is nonsense. And it is not mainstream anymore at all.
It isn't. Now, what I want to do, Ben, and I've done it with Charlie Cook, I've done it with Eli Lake, I did it with Tom Cotton yesterday and a couple other people. I made a long list after reading the David Packer piece or the George Packer piece in New Yorker after David Axelrod, which is nonsense. It's garbage. And so I made a list of the political violence since Donald Trump was elected. And you have four choices with each of these: left wing, right wing, Islamist, nuts. I suppose you could say I don't know either, but I want to move fast through it. First of all, the shooting in Dallas this week: left wing, right wing, Islamist, or nuts?
Left wing. It's an anti-ICE. It's an anti-ICE shooter.
The shootings at ICE in August and July.
I think that is left wing as well. It's clearly something that was motivated by and connected to. Andy No talked about this as the Antifa wing that was a cell that was pretty active.
Attack on the ABC affiliate in Sacramento, California, after Kimmel was suspended.
According to their own statements, left wing. At least if you're going to believe the mishegas that they left.
Destruction of memorial, attack on some supporters at vigils for Charlie.
I don't think you can say that any motivation other than left wing.
Right. Fox News van attempted bombing.
I'm sure that they were just, a big fan of Nick Fuentes.
Yeah.
Of course,
it might be Islamist. I've been told to be careful. It might be Islamist. Of course, the assassination of Charlie, I think, is left-wing violence, and I don't care what people say at ABC about the love notes. What do you think?
Yes. No, I don't think you can put it's clearly a trans hate motivated thing, and additionally other kinds of hate motivated thing in terms of Charlie's definition, and that is left wing.
All right. Murder of the Catholic kids in Minneapolis this summer.
It's at least trans motivated. It seems like, and some of the rhetoric that was written on the weapon in question, certainly left wing. You could say it's just nuts, but there's a thin line between trans left wing and nuts on that.
I think it's a mixed case. How about the murder of Melissa and Mark Hortman in Minnesota?
That one seems to be motivated by left wing principles as well. If you actually dig into it, it seems like people are representing it falsely. I think is motivated by the right wing.
I think it's nuts. I think the guy's crazy, but
yeah,
he did do a lot of pro-life speaking in Africa, and then he thought Tim Waltz was telling him to kill these. I just think he's nuts. Murder of the two Israeli embassy employees at the reception in the Jewish Museum in May.
If I certainly view that as left wing. There's only one party that has the anti-Israel brief at this point.
Murder of Brian Thompson in New York in December of 2024.
Luigi, I mean, come on, look at who is praising him. If Taylor Lorenz is praising you, I think you're on the left.
And Senator Warren said people can only be pushed so far. She took it back, but she said it.
Yes.
The attacks on the Tesla dealerships, including arson and vandalism.
Clearly motivated by attacks on Elon joining with Trump. I mean, it's all left.
Two attempts on Trump and the murder of Corey Compatore, of course.
Well, of course, we know the second one in terms of its motivation. The first one, it could just be nuts. I will say that because we don't know as much about that first one, and I think that we deserve to know a heck of a lot more. But it certainly was not something where we had any indication that it was coming from anything other than the left. You could, though, say it's someone who's nuts and just wants to be famous.
Okay, a couple West Coast. Murder of Paul Kessler, the 69-year-old Jewish American fatally injured during the pro-Israel demonstration.
I mean, by the way, that one is just incredibly sad. I mean, all of these are sad, but it's just that whole scene. But I think you have to say left. I mean, it's clearly
attack on Paul Pelosi.
That guy seemed to be nuts to a degree that is like space cadet level nuts, but there's also so many different conspiracy theories about that one, Hugh. I don't want to go down that Reddit thread.
I think he's nuts. How about the anti-Semitic violence on campuses from Columbia to UCLA and Michigan in between and Harvard, everywhere else?
I mean, I just don't think you can say anything but this is coming from the left. It is. It clearly is. I mean, this is not a both sides question, Hugh. I'm
going to continue with the list with Ben during the break. You'll get it on the One Big Weekend pod. I've only got 4 or 5 more. Continuing down my list, the March 2023 murder of the children at the Christian school in Nashville.
I mean, again, you can't, I think, separate the trans policy from the nuttiness in terms of the motivation, but I think that is very much, again, holistically owned by the left.
The attempt to kill Brett Kavanaugh we've talked about, but let's just put it on the list.
Yep. I mean, this was a clear left-winger and clearly meant to stop a decision. And, I mean, we have explicit, expressions of the belief in that, and there's just no question about it. Then
we have the January 6th, 2021 Capitol riot.
I think that that's a right-wing element of violence. I mean, I really do. And I
do too.
So at the time, and I think
that's the first.
And,
that's the first thing.
And I would just say I am not of this category of people who think that that was a situation that deserved only a slap on the wrist for people who participated in actual violence. I want to be specific about that. If you participated in actual violence, I thought you deserved to have the book thrown at you. You can't do that. I think I would take a more lenient attitude towards some people who invaded property but didn't do anything violent, didn't steal anything, et cetera. But to me, that is just clear-cut right-wing violence, and you can't do it.
Kidnap plot of Governor Whitmer in Michigan.
So, how many feds were inside the building on that one?
They did convict people, though. They did convict people.
They did convict people. They did have some things thrown out. I've read a good deal about this, Hugh. I would say that was of the right, but I also think that there were a lot of discussions about different politicians involved, including some Republicans, that they might kidnap. And so I view that as a little bit more right anarchist, if that makes sense. So I'll say on the right just for the sake of simplicity, but I think it's a little more complicated than that.
The death of Heather Hyde at the Charlottesville Tiki Torch rally by the neo-Nazis on August 17, 2020.
I think that was of the right, just given the motivations that we know, in terms of the context. But I also think that was something that was so clearly unconnected to the right in terms of its motivation. You could make a case, but I'll put it on the right.
Okay, two more. The softball practice attempt to wipe out the GOP Congressional Caucus on June 14, 2017.
Yeah, by the guy who lived in the same place where I keep my storage unit. That was left. Hard left.
Very left. Bernie guy, though. Bernie denounced it. And then finally, this is big. The day that Donald Trump was inaugurated, Antifa destroyed property in D.C. They did it again last week, and they have never stopped in between. Are they left-wing?
They are completely left-wing in terms of their principles, in terms of everything that they do. And what's more, as Andy Ngo has pointed out, as others who pay attention to him has pointed out, the people who are bailing them out are left-wing. This is the thing people get wrong about Antifa. They don't actually need to get funding from these different places in order to do the terrible and violent acts that they do. What they do depend on is a cohort of people who are well-funded, who get them out of jail and get them out back on the streets quickly. And that's the reason that they're able to continue these activities, despite all of the efforts to shut them down on a local level.
Now, Ben and I are coming back on the other side to talk about, it's obviously overwhelmingly left-wing violence with some mental illness thrown in and 2 or 3 instances of right-wing violence, which is not really Republican conservative violence. Nevertheless, what do we do about it? Ben Domenech is my guest. Follow Ben at bdomenech on X. Read him. His Substack is The Transom. He is a contributing editor to The Spectator, and he's a Fox News contributor. Ben, we went through the whole list. Violence in America since Donald Trump was elected, political violence, overwhelmingly on the left. George Packer comes out with this New Yorker piece. David Axelrod, who I have a great deal of admiration for, he's just wrong about everything, but he's a nice guy. So he'll read this, look at this, and it's nuts. It's sort of like the people who think in Hollywood that Kimmel is the victim here.
Yeah, I think you've hit on a connection that I myself maybe hadn't fully thought of, but I think really makes a lot of sense here. They live in a bubble in which they do not see the way that these different incidents have been received by common Americans. You went through that list, and I actually would say that for most people who I talk to, even those who are not politically engaged, the vast majority of them are familiar with at least half of the incidents that you're talking about. They have radiated across the country. They get national attention. And because of that, much in the similar way that I would actually say, I mean, this may seem like an odd connection, but I would say, the reason that people sort of respond to incidents of police violence is because they have something to look at, that they can see and that makes them feel like the problem is perhaps worse than it is. In this case, the problem isn't worse than people think it is. It is as bad as people think it is, but it's also because they can see these things on camera. They can see the evidence of it in their day-to-day lives. And these things are happening in major cities across the country. I mean, when you're targeting a Dallas ICE facility like that and you have the footage and you have everything that follows from it, people take a lesson from that in Dallas and the surrounding areas. And even if you're an apolitical person, you say, this is sowing chaos. And what I have seen, and some of the polling is going to be coming out, if it hasn't already, in the coming weeks. But the indications that I have from the people who I talk to who are running these polls constantly is that the shift that they are seeing, particularly among independent voters, is putting this on the American left, that they believe that the left is causing more violence and chaos than the right. And so that's why I think it's so incumbent upon them to make this, they feel the need to make this both sidesism argument against all the facts, because they're hoping that the independent, movable voter will not believe their own eyes.
And I don't think I think it's a tsunami of evidence will overwhelm them. You know what I left off the list, Ben? You didn't notice it. I did not bring up the violence in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd, because I think that's a very complicated. I was in the riots of LA in 1992. It's a very complicated racial situation that I find difficult
I would
to
also
categorize.
say, I think the left, I would actually describe that as a situation where the left grabbed on to something that was an expression of frustration and racial tension, and turned it, or attempted to turn it, in multiple cities, including, of course, Portland, Seattle, and others, into left-wing violence. But can I add one more thing to this?
Please.
And I have to say, I didn't know we were going to get so dark on a Friday. I was looking forward to asking you whether I should put a future on the Guardians for the series.
You absolutely should. They got the pitching, but go ahead.
But here's the thing. I think that this is a, we've been in certain situations in the past where, the haves, the political haves in the country, they break in different directions. You remember, of course, epistemic closure, that popular phrase from the left-wing bloggers back in the day during the Bush era. One of the things that I think is going on for the left is that they have been so crushed by these elections, they don't know who to turn to, and they themselves do not trust necessarily these guardians of these gatekeepers that still exist, the New Yorker, the Atlantic, New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, et cetera, who have been telling them so many things. They told them that Joe Biden was the only way to win. They told them that Kamala Harris was the only way to win. They've told them all these things, and they're looking to them for reassurance. So part of what I think that George Packer piece is trying to do is reassure their audience. You are not the bad guys. You are not the baddies. You are not on the wrong side of this thing. You can keep calling them fascists and Nazis, and it's not going to be on you. And you know who doesn't believe that? Anyone else.
70%. And let me add a couple of points to this to get your comment. In the middle of all this, Kamala Harris goes on a book tour, which reveals she's really as empty as we thought she might be. And we've got an enormous number of lefties coming to Jimmy Kimmel's defense in an attempt to make him a hero during the morning of Charlie Kirk. And then finally, people don't really understand what the Charlie Kirk explosion of grief, mourning, and at the same time Christian belief was about. They lack the language, and they've run away from it. Can you watch this? There won't be anything about Charlie this weekend. It's over, right? It's a week later. The news cycle wants to move on, but a lot of people are going to go to church.
Yeah, and here's the thing that they don't understand about this. That is something that is not a short-lived event. For the lefties, and I think in particularly for the Acela corridor folks who are within this space, who viewed Charlie as just being another representation of kind of, college republicanism or something like that, they had a very limited view of what he was. And for the vast majority of Americans, including those who were not even going to Turning Point events or participating in it, he meant a lot more than that, and especially to American teenagers and to young people across the country for whom you can actually see the polling data in terms of the shifts that he had in certain areas, and particularly college campus towns across swing states in the Midwest, et cetera. There's drill down on this that is very clear. And what that actually means is this has a much longer tail. And it's not just about politics. It's about faith. It's about providing an answer for an entire generation that is perhaps the most unchurched that we've had in the history of modern polling. They are hungry for what he had on offer. They understand that the thing that has been offered to them by the left, by the traditional approach to academia, which tries to shove this speech to the side, that is not something that actually satisfies them on any real level as a human. And they were eager for something more, and he was offering it to them. And that's
there are a bunch of people who are Charlie Kirk adjacent, Ben. You, Guy Benson, Mary Catherine Ham, Michael Knowles. There's Riley Gaines. There's a long list of people who are adjacent to that space that the left doesn't have.
I just want to say we are adjacent. He is 10 years younger than all of us.
I know, but adjacent is adjacent.
I will say this. I think I may have said this to you before. I was skeptical when he came. When I met him, back in like 2014. it was right during the heyday of Obamaism and everything on college campuses. I'm like, you're going to try to win over young people? I mean, good luck. But as it turned out, guess what? He was right. And that's the kind of thing that I think is one of the reasons that he has so emboldened young people across this country. And it's not going to go away. And the left, I think, is going to be shocked by how much it doesn't go away.
So exit question. Is it going to show up in New Jersey and Virginia in November?
I think it's already it's showing up in New Jersey. We'll see what happens here in Virginia. But I certainly think, nominating two people who are essentially gatekeeper left candidates in Nikki Sherrill and in Spanberger in New Jersey and Virginia, respectively, was a bad choice for the left. But look who's actually running their party, Hugh. It is not the people who are picking those people. It is social media. It is the people who are picking Zohran Mamdani. And they have no ability to block that kind of thing. And so instead, they're trying to ride the tiger. They're trying to just whitewash his extremism out. And you're going to be hearing from the New Yorker over the coming weeks and months, here's why Zohran is great for America. They've already started it, by the way. They've already done some glow-up little profiles of him, and it's only going to continue because
if I had time, I would ask you if Gavin Newsom saying the elections would be canceled in 2028 will follow him. He said that the night before the ICE attack.
He's catering to that extreme. He's catering to that extreme, and it is very dangerous and wrong.
And I think it's going to hurt him. We will see. Ben Domenech, thank you. Follow him on X at Beat Domenech. Read him at The Transom. Read him at The Spectator. See him on Fox News. Thank you, Ben. Have a great weekend. The American Exploration and Production Council is my sponsor. They're brand new. You might have heard their president on the program this week. And you might have heard John Campbell yesterday talk about the fact that California has 11 refineries and 2 of them are going to close. John predicting $8 a gallon gas, maybe as high as $10 a gallon gas. That's what the American Exploration and Production Council is focused on. Remember their moniker, axpc.org. axpc.org. Energy is freedom. And you can't go get energy unless you get permits from local, regional, state, and federal governments. And axpc.org, again, it's the American Exploration and Production Council, is intent on getting those permits, and they want you to help them make America's legislators aware of the growing need to meet the growing energy demand. We have to lower costs for families. We need to secure high-paying jobs that come out of the energy business. We need to strengthen our national security. Remember, energy is freedom. Go to axpc.org and sign up. axpc.org. Permitting reform can be done. We can get more oil and gas out of American sources much more quickly when we fix the permitting system. axpc.org. Let me also remind you, I'm in the Relief Factor studio. Another sponsor took my Relief Factor in the first hour. A lot of you are going to be out there doing your weekend warrior stuff. Some of you play basketball at the gym. I think that's for people who are 40 and younger. You're going to lose your Achilles. And I just go a long way. Last Saturday I did 10. Weather permitting, I'm going to do 10 tomorrow as well. Why? I just save up a bunch of podcasts. I got a book that I'm listening to. It just takes a couple of hours and I get it done. I want you not to start with 10 miles. Start with a mile. Get moving. You might feel some aches and pains afterwards. That's what Relief Factor is for. Right now, if you call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, they will rush you the starter pack and tell them you're a first-time customer. Starter pack is $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. Relief Factor is where you go to find the starter pack on the web as well. 1-800-4RELIEF if you want to call, but you can go to their website, relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. It is the only supplement that I have taken for more than 20 years. I've been taking it for a dozen. Don't miss it. I believe in it. It works. So I believe I'm able to keep going and keep going and keep going. The Energizer Bunny thing is really the Relief Factor Bunny thing. Give it a try. You'll thank me. Finally, let's save you some money on this Friday. ConsumerCellular.org. Now, I don't know who your cell provider is. You might have already tried to save money once, or you might have been in the same plan since cell phones were invented. Freedom is calling you. Get free of the big cost, big data plans, especially if you're 50 and older. You need to call Consumer Cellular at 800-411-4455. 4454. 1-800-411-4454. That's 1-800-411-4454. You can get all the service you want and have savings at the same time. You can have savings without sacrificing service. Excellent cell phone reception across the country. And if you're 50 years and older and you think you need a lot of data, like I do, I'm over 50, I use data. And I don't watch movies on my phone. I'm just on my phone. I was listening to the Guardians lose to the Tigers last night, for example. If you watch on your devices, then you want consumer cellular if you're over 50, because you can get 2 lines of unlimited data, 2 lines, same numbers, same data. They'll move all your contacts over. You can get a new device if you want or not. But they can do that in about 20 minutes, and they are offering you two lines of unlimited data for $60 a month. You'll save money. Now, here's the kicker. Some of you don't need unlimited data. Some of you only need 5 gigs or 10 gigs. Some of you are like the fetching Mrs. Hewitt. She just doesn't like to be on the phone. That's not who she is. If that's you, call them up, 1-800-411-4454, and say, I've got my phone bill in front of me. What do I look for? And they'll tell you what to look for. You'll look for how much data you're using, and then they're going to customize the data plan that you need. 5 gigs, 10 gigs, unlimited. They'll tell you, but you'll save money. And with one button, all right, when you call 1-800-411-4454, there'll be one menu. You press one button, and you're talking to someone in America. All their call centers are in America. 20 minutes later, you're free of big cellular, and you're into consumercellular.com/Hugh. consumercellular.com/Hugh. And remember my code, Hugh25. Whether you call or whether you go online, remember Hugh25, because you'll get an additional $5 off a month for the first 5 months. Hugh25, but the number is 800-411-4454. A couple of weeks ago, I introduced the Friday Football Forecast with Doug Lesmerises. Doug is the co-host of the Bill and Doug Show, which I think is the finest college football show on Substack. You can go try it out. I just posted it on X. Doug, welcome back. We had to take a couple of weeks off because of the awful news, but people need their football more than ever. It's what people bring, that they can put away the woes of the world. So, question number 1. I listened to your podcast today, so I think I know what the answer is. What's the college football game we ought to all be focused on this weekend?
Split screen, Hugh. Can you do it on Saturday night? Split screen or flipping back and forth, 7:30. We have number 5 Georgia versus number 17 Alabama on ABC at the same time as number 3 Penn State versus number 6 Oregon on NBC. So you got to go back and forth. This is about as good as it gets outside of Ohio State in the Big Ten. It's as good as it gets in the SEC. It's a great comparison of how good those two conferences are. So you have to watch both at the same time. I know it's a lot to ask, but if you got the flipper, get the flipper going. And there's 2 coaches really up against it here a little bit. James Franklin, the Penn State coach, has been really successful. He's 4-20 against teams ranked in the top 10. Oregon's number 6. Kirby Smart at Georgia has 2 national championships. He's beaten everybody. The one team he can't beat is Alabama. He's 1-6 against Alabama. Both those showdowns Saturday night.
Doug, do you mind or do you pay attention to who calls the game? Does it matter to you who calls the game when you're flipping?
I think it matters a lot to fans. It's like that's like inviting somebody over to your house for 3.5 hours. You don't want to invite somebody over that you don't like. So yeah, that really matters, Hugh.
Now, who is calling? Is Gus involved? I love Gus. I think Gus is the best play-by-play guy out there.
Gus brings an aura of excitement. I do like the Gus Johnson-Joel Klatt pairing. They're on Fox. They're not part of this. NBC, I think, is going to be Todd Blackledge, the former Penn State quarterback on NBC. And then ABC, you'll have Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit in your living room.
All right, so those are 2 college games on Saturday. We got to wait. That's late. Yeah, that's late for us old guys.
You got to stay up.
I like the big noon kickoff. I know you don't like the big noon. I like the big noon kickoff, but I can make it for 2 games, especially to watch Penn State and Oregon. By the way, if you're betting that, and it's not a betting show, who are you betting? I don't know what the line is. Who are you betting in that game?
Both those games are about a field goal, about a 3-point game. Penn State is favored at home. I did take Oregon to win by a point. I think it's a toss-up game. Oregon beat Penn State in the Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis last year. It's a whiteout, Hugh. Beaver Stadium is bonkers. Ooh. It's as good of a home atmosphere as anywhere in the country. Those Penn State fans need to be there for Penn State. I'm sure they will be, but Oregon's offense has looked electric so far. I think it's a toss-up game.
All right, what is the NFL game of the week that we watch?
Yeah, so listen, you've heard of the Chiefs, right? Very famous. They're good at football. The Chiefs, the Kansas City Chiefs, the previous 3 seasons, the best record in the regular season in the NFL. They're 40-11. The Baltimore Ravens, the 5th best record. They're 35-16. These are 2 excellent teams who are both 1-2 so far this season, and they play at 4:25 in Kansas City on Sunday. Somebody's coming out 2-2. Somebody's coming out 1-3, Hugh. And you think about what these teams have been, especially the Chiefs, right? The Chiefs have been the defining team of the sport. If they come out of here at 1-3, it doesn't mean their season is over. But there's a lot on the line for a September game when you have 2 proud franchises that are off to slow starts.
I will watch that. Now, I'm going to look back to last week. I have got 4 tickets to the Browns games. I could not give them away to my brother, to my 3 nephews, to my niece. Couldn't give them away to my boys. Couldn't give them away to Packers fans. Nobody wanted to go to the game because they thought it was going to be a nightmare for the Browns, and the Packers fans thought, this will be easy. Were you surprised by that, Douglas Maurice?
I was very surprised there. Oh, man, Hugh, they missed out on the 55-yard field goal to win it. You can hold that over your family and friends forever. The doubters, how dare they doubt the Browns?
Yeah.
That defense, Hugh, the Browns defense is so good. Their defense is so good. Yeah, I know.
Let's do the check-in on the Buckeyes. Big game out west this weekend. What do you think?
Yeah, really fun at Washington. Washington on a 22-game home winning streak. If people aren't aware of the Washington Huskies and their football program, beautiful open stadium right on Lake Washington. People pull their boats up to tailgate at the edge of the stadium. They haven't lost at home since 2021. They're 3-0. This game, Hugh, is only about a touchdown edge for the Buckeyes because Washington does really have some good offensive players. Great test for Ohio State. First road game for their young quarterback, Julian Sayin. Ohio State's the number 1 team in the country, Hugh. We know that. This is a test. I think this is a real game. I think both offenses are going to score.
How do you rate Julian Sayin at this part of his career with other previous great, CJ, for example? Where is he ahead of where they were in their 3rd game or 4th game, or is he behind where they were?
Yeah, it's pretty close. Ohio State did a good job with Julian Sayin limiting his responsibilities in the opener against Texas. They didn't want to put too much on his plate. C.J. Stroud came out, and he had a tough game, the 2nd game of his career. This is the test here, like in week 4 again for Julian Sayin. It's different on the road, Hugh. I think he's very sharp. C.J. Stroud, his brain was like a computer. Julian Sayin is very similar in that way. Gets the ball out quickly, but it's going to be nuts in Washington, and a big test on these road games, Hugh. You can't hear the offensive linemen. You have to go to silent counts to snap the ball. Sometimes the defense can get a jump on you. It's just a different thing to be like, it gets in your brain. You can feel the hum. It's like being at a concert. And so that's the test for Julian Sayin. We know he's smart. We know he's accurate. Can he handle the environment?
All right, last question is a transition question to the Browns. You followed Quinshon Judkins very closely after he transferred into the Buckeyes. He turned it on last week, and maybe he is Nick Chubb. What do you think? Physical
back, a guy that can take a pounding, can break tackles. It is a little similar to Chubb, and I will say, when the Browns drafted Nick Chubb a couple years ago, they had 2 great backs coming out of Georgia. The Browns took the right one. 2 great backs coming out of Ohio State. Maybe it looks like the Browns took the right one. That early 2nd round pick, I do think he has it. Listen, Nick Chubb, that's hallowed ground in Cleveland, Hugh. We can't just go throwing around Nick Chubb comparisons, but he's the real deal. Judkins is the real deal.
Go and check out the Bill and Doug Show. It's on Substack. Just Google Bill and Doug Show or put in Doug Maurice. Try it. You'll love it. They produce a lot of content. They produce more content than I do. And we'll be back with Monday Misery and Magic with Doug after the weekend's results are in. Doug LeMaurice, thank you. Love the decorations in the studio. Tarzana Joe is the poet laureate of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Hugh. A little housekeeping first. My website is under reconstruction, and since it links to the Reagan.com account, if anyone wants to get in touch with me, it's tarzanajoe@hotmail.com, or they can go to my Facebook page. All right?
Tarzana Joe at hotmail.com or your Facebook page. Verse away, Joe.
My state is an asylum. How else can you explain it? A veritable dismal swamp. Will someone please come drain it? A man took shots at ABC. You'd think he'd rot in jail, but under California's code, they set him free on bail. The FBI secured him, and the hue and cry increased. What of the judge who set him free? His name was not released. State income taxes through the roof. We struggle to survive, and now they want to tax us for the miles that we drive. Insurers won't insure our homes, and when they burn to dust, we donate to foundations who then betray our trust. Arnold wanted high-speed rail, but his attention wandered. He raised about $10 billion, which his successors squandered. I wanted to go ride that train. I hope I'm still alive. It won't be taking passengers till 2045. Our governor, in all his speeches, shouts accountability. The state in which he governs is, alas, advanced senility. The highest unemployment in the entire nation, the highest homeless spending with the largest population. With all of this, I give you folks a final viral stunner. In 2028, this guy is hailed as the front runner. California, Here I Go by Tarzana Joe.
You know, Joe, I'm not going to move back now. I was this close. I was not going. Now I'm not going to move back. When TarzanaJoe.com is done with repairs, will that be posted there? California, Here I Go?
But it will be on Facebook, the Tarzana Joe Facebook page. I have another question for you. When the governor says, I don't think there's going to be an election in 2028, there's an implied unless. What's the unless?
I think it's a coup. He's implying a coup, and it's nuts. I think Gavin's really lost it. But I want to make sure people who need a poem are well served by my program. They need to write this week and next, TarzanaJoe@hotmail.com. Is that correct?
That is correct.
TarzanaJoe@hotmail.com. Who's doing your web overhaul, and when will they be done?
I have the greatest confidence in Dave Parkhurst out of Arizona, who's been my go-to guy for web fixes.
All right. But in the meantime, TarzanaJoe@hotmail.com, because people get married. Your poetry website might go down, but the weddings are going on, and the retirements and the birthdays, right? You can't just walk away and take a vacation, Joe.
No, you know how many people are getting married in October? What is it about
I
October?
hope more, and I hope they all need a poem. Right, Joe? His rates are reasonable. TarzanaJoe@hotmail.com. TarzanaJoe@hotmail.com.